Clubs, and upcoming the return of the Anderson Soiree. How important is it for the city to have a signature event?
I think it is very important. Obviously, you and I know the background of Soiree, but basically, it was a volunteer event with some support for the city, but mainly, I think the early volunteers of Soiree were young, and they could put up stages, they could run cable, and right at the end in '08, and I'd been in the office for 2 years, and was on that committee, and the committee just got old, and they retired, and we had a couple committee members that moved to other places, and so but I always thought that we needed that signature event. And once we figured out, and we do it very well now, we can support it infrastructure-wise. I mean, we're pretty good at putting up tents, and we own our tents, and we have tables. And so when Caroline Gaddis came to us and said, hey, you know, our leadership class at the chamber, I want to present this to it. I thought it was a good fit because what we can do, we have Carolina Ren Park, we have a lot of venues that were not available a couple of decades ago. And so, and we can do the infrastructure part of it, and we're good with that. And but the volunteer part of it, they still need to do that. I think what's really encouraging for me, being an old guy, the gray-haired old guy, is that some of the younger kids that remember Soiree, they're the leadership, you know, and they're the future leaders of our community. So two things, I'm excited to see what those 2 days do for our community. I can almost see it being a testing ground for more than 2 days, and I think it will be very well received.
Well, you mentioned the new stuff. We got Carolina Ren Park and Church Street Park. We got parking garage. And I think we talked about before. Didn't you say there's better access to electrical power around town, right?
Yes, yeah, and
because it was Cable City last time.
Yeah. I mean, it's very well. I mean, there's a lot of underground sources now. I mean, think about security. We pretty much have cameras on downtown, and so from a security point of view, our guys, our police department can man it in a booth and look at all aspects of the event, and, you know, and so you have eyes on the ground, but they're with security. I think about the venues now. I think, and we're calling the North Main Commons will be in play, and that's the space in between Magnetic Brewery and, I call it the Old Den. I think John Wright Jr. is developing that space for retail, and we've got that little pocket park right there with the fountain that probably is going to be dedicated right around the same time with TBA. And so the streetscape going along North Main Street, taking that 4 lanes and narrowing it into 2 lanes, the infrastructure, the sidewalks that are connecting Calhoun, I think that's important. We're doing behind Kimbrell's, that parking lot behind Kimbrell's will be, we need parking, you know, and so that'll add an additional 26 parking spaces. And I really do think that at some point, sooner than later, we'll have to do another parking garage somewhere, because parking is becoming a premium, as most people know who come to downtown. So yeah, all that's good stuff.
The city is growing, and that was sort of the next thing I was going to go to. You think about with the city's Chemtex revitalization that y'all are spearheading, the county's Equinox project, that's roughly 350 new housing units that will be part of downtown as it expands. Mm-hmm. How will that help and impact the city, and what are the challenges of that?
I think the challenge of that, I can remember one of our former city managers, Linda McConnell, said that the parking patterns change every 90 days, and that's true. I mean, parking will continue to be at a premium. You know, with two garages, the parking that we have back in the event center, but with the Chemtex project, which are 130 some odd apartments, the county's project, you know, putting more people in close proximity to downtown is a good thing. I think the whole idea that the Chemtex property and the revitalization of maybe even the Anderson Mill site and the Equinox Mill site, one thing it does is it redevelops area of our city and our county that needs to be redeveloped. We've done some annexations over the last 18 months at Salem Church Road, Midway Road, Old Williamston Road. That's important because, you know, as I've said before, the county does a really good job of attracting manufacturers, and they employ people, and quite honestly, we just need places for people to live, and so we've got to redevelop and build housing, a housing stock.
I want to talk to you more about that in just a second. Well, something you just mentioned there I think is key is if those three projects, like I said, one of them's not really even in the hard planning stages, the old Anderson Mill, but that will almost take care of most of the blight from around downtown. If we get those three areas redeveloped, I mean, we won't have any ugly old properties to do anymore. That'll really be a huge expansion of downtown.
I do think that the Central Business District, with some of the developments that are going on, the old Palmetto building, the lofts of the lofts that have been, and I think those are, if I'm not mistaken, Greg, 30 some odd units. And they're working really hard. I think I just heard they're pre-leased everything, and they hope to be in there hopefully by July. So that's a big thing.
How about that? You mentioned the parking garage. We're looking at the restaurant or the whatever on the top of that. Has that made any progress?
I think we are very close to announcing that project. There's talks with several different companies that would like that space. I think the council was looking in the future, and we like one came in and said, well, we'd have to run gas lines and water. So we've already done that. Okay, and so the people who are looking at that are very pleased with that. It's ready to move in, so to speak. I understand that one company that's looking at it said just that is in the business of rooftop venues, said it's probably would be one of the better ones from a scenic point of view, if you've seen it, in the venue that they've done in big cities.
You mentioned a while ago, before we got too far from it, annexation to make sure people had enough housing. How does the city council decide which areas make sense for annexation?
That's a good question. I think we don't do it just by happenstance. I mean, we have to make sure that the police chief has to feel comfortable about covering the area. The fire chief has to be comfortable with it. The director of public works has to be comfortable with it, because we've got to buy equipment. We have to pick up more garbage, and so we have to look at these types of annexations. I would say we've been looking at different parts of the city for a decade. And once we decide that we can get to that area and understand how it impacts our business on the general fund side, that's kind of how we look at it. And I think the other part about it is, and we've got to grow, and I hope people understand that. I think I can remember Joe Riley the mayor of Charleston. Everybody knows Joe Riley. He told me one day, he said, Terence, if you don't grow your city would die. And that I always remember saying that. So people expect quality of life things. I think one of the things that I'm so shocked at is the use of the bird scooters. I've seen some people our age that I'm like, that might not be a bad idea. That might not be a good idea for you to be on that bird scooter. So I've seen 60-some-year-old people use them, and I've seen, younger kids use them. And so that's just part of the vitality of a city. And so people want the amenities. They want dining. They want shopping opportunities. They want cultural. And when people are looking to either retire or relocate to raise a growing family, they look at those quality of life things. And that's what we do as municipalities, provide that quality of life. And so to do that, we got to grow. It's not strictly about growing the base for revenue. I mean, it's about growing the base to make sure that we stay on the list of places where people want to come. And I think by and large, the whole upstate of South Carolina has done that. We're in one of the largest mega regions, business regions in the country. I think the third largest business region in the country. So we're going to grow. We just got to be able to accommodate that growth.
How has the pandemic funding helped projects that y'all were working on, or was there anything y'all needed it for particularly?
And, it helped small business. I mean, we did our part with small business. We did our part with mortgage assistance, infrastructure-wise, roads and bridges. A lot of that money and gas tax money and so forth. I get concerned about local roads. I mean, the city and the county, we only have so much funding. Our transportation committee can only do so much, and so a lot of times people complain about roads and to city and county council, and a lot of those roads are state roads.
You mentioned quality of life issues. One of the big things I know the city continues to expand recreation programs and trails. Can you give me some updates on what all y'all doing there?
Yep. The Lindley Park project that consists of the phase 2 of the Recreation Master Plan, which will be completed if it ever stops raining for 4 or 5 days in a row. We had hoped to have those ball fields up but rain gets us. But it's going to be a state-of-the-art facility where we'll have 2 baseball fields. It's going to be artificial turf. We'll be able to do football down there, concession stands, bathrooms, and so it will also be the first phase of the Lindley Park extension. Internally, we're calling it Upper Lindley and Lower Lindley, but Upper Lindley, that trail system, hopefully we will probably seek funding for that this summer, and some of the engineering has been done, and so I would envision that trail starting maybe later on this year. But it'd be good to be able to connect Upper Lindley through the rec center to B. Thompson Park, and I think probably speaking of B. Thompson Park, has become one of the most popular parks in the whole metro area. The playground equipment, the surface, state of the art, and we are about to duplicate that in D.B. Walker Park. It'll be a different theme, and that's exciting because that park has created a go-to to B. Thompson Park, where people wouldn't necessarily have gone to that side of town. But, it's safe, it's inviting, and you go by there, and if you hadn't been there, but if you go by there, you got a small kid, the zip lines and the swings and so forth, it's a great little park. And we're getting ready to do the same thing at D.B. Walker Park and try to theme something different in all the parks.
How about the rec center? It seems to be getting lots of use. Any plans to expand the rec center?
Yeah, we need to do that too. We probably after we do the ball fields, start on the park. There's a need for more fitness for seniors. What we found is maybe seniors like the maybe the lower activity pace than Hawaii or goes, and a lot of our senior population, as far as just the use of the facility and the classes, has really taken off. And so we looked at doing another wing of that building in the field that would be in between the ball fields, and so quite naturally you could do maybe a couple more basketball courts that would relieve some tension in regards to who would have thought pickleball would have been what pickleball is, and aerobic classes and so forth. So there's a need, and we are in a position to continue to keep going the master plan.
How much does hospitality tax help with recreation?
Tremendously. When the city started hospitality tax, I think the first numbers were maybe $500,000. And again, obviously that's the 2% that you receive on food and beverages. Last year it was a little bit over $3 million. And what that helps is it helps us pay for projects as we go. We're not borrowing money. We're trying to be good stewards of that money. And as you know, that money has to be used for specific things within the letter of the state law. And but without it, without it, Carolina Marine Park would have had a hard time. The bike trails receive some of that support, and so by using some of the general fund dollars and the hospitality dollars, that's how a lot of the recreation stuff gets done.
One of the things I know the city has helped sponsor and you've been involved in is the Reconciliation Project initiative with Equal Justice. Have you received any updates? I know there's a big event planned for June. Have you received any other updates on the soil gathering, etc.?
We've had 2 soil gatherings. I attended one. The one I attended was in Piedmont. Very powerful. And what we're are talking about is there have been like 4,000 lynchings documented by EJI, Brian Stevenson in Montgomery, Alabama. And so we've identified 5 here in Anderson County, and had great leadership from Dr. Ancona Anderson at Welfare Baptist Church, Dr. Stuart Sprague, in trying to number one, recognize that it happened, and just trying to have a dialogue about how it affected us then and how it still affects our society. And so we have one. The third one is scheduled, I want to say, the 22nd, right here at the John Street parking lot. There's an EJI website, and those dates have been put on that. So and the one you're talking, we had a Juneteenth celebration last year, and we'll do Juneteenth. I think is on maybe the 20th. Is that not one day, it's several days, and so I think we'll do something similar to what we did last year on the 20th. We have a lot of parks, and one of the parks that we do have that, and I consider it a park, is Old Silverbrook. You know, and we done a great job of the last few years of maintaining that space. You know, we don't need grave sites to be grown over with weeds and so forth. But I would like to give some love and make sure that we keep doing that old cemetery. Same thing with the majority black cemetery over on the west side of town. So those are parks, and we try to maintain those parks, and it's part of our history.
They're very rich in history, both of them too. I mean,
Yeah.
it's almost like tours. Maybe historical tours.
Yeah,
going through
and there are
those
other
places.
communities that, and we've done. I think we've done events and tours, but I mean it's worth taking a look at if you're in a community.
If you could have looked into a crystal ball right after you got elected to your first term and seen where Anderson is today, how pleased do you think you would have been?
Oh, very pleased. I knew that we had potential, and I didn't run because I thought something was broken. I mean, we had a lot of good stuff going on. I just think that, as you know, I mean, I'm at a lot of different tables. I mean, locally, statewide, nationwide, and so I met a lot of people over the years that I think probably the job of a mayor is to say, I know somebody that you should talk to, or I've got a problem you should be able to talk to. And so if you're not at the table, you're not represented. And I try to be at the table so our community, not only the city of Anderson, but our whole region is represented. And so that's been rewarding. So, 4 more years. Bill Barnett, former mayor of Spartanburg, he said the bad thing about this business is that you always have one more thing you want to see through. People always ask me, you still have your State Farm agency. I say, you don't understand how this works. I do. The business allows me to do things like this in the middle of the day, but I still put in my 40, 50 hours a week there at State Farm. Yeah. Got a lot of people depending on me to show up and sell insurance.